Hello everyone, this is the Asian Athletic and we are doing a recap of the Champions League because yes, continental football is finally back. And I'm not on about the UEFA Champions League, I'm on about the Asian Champions League Elite. Every week we're going to do a video recapping all the games that have happened. I'm going to give you my thoughts about them, and we've got some pretty interesting games that happened in the past couple of days, and we're going to get straight away stuck into one of the best ones. Nasaf versus Al-Hilal. Al-Hilal won 3-2. I thought Nasaf were pretty impressive. Obviously, you look at the stats and it looks terrible. Al-Hilal got 16 shots off with 63% of the possession. Nasaf only got 5. But, you know, we all know the quality of Al-Hilal. We all know the gulf of quality between Saudi Arabian football and all the other countries in sort of West Asia, basically. And I think when you consider that, Nasaf did pretty well. Honestly, I think they're set up to try and get 3 points. They're playing with a formation that's quite, you know, allows them to really express themselves attackingly. I think the only problem is that they don't quite have the quality of the fullbacks to actually make a difference. Obviously, that's why Golban and Mohamediev, they got subbed at half-time. There's a reason for that. It's because they don't have the fullbacks to add to the wing play. And wing play is something I'm going to talk about a little bit later. It's the sort of main dominant play style that we've been seeing in the Champions League so far. I thought Nemetov actually had a decent game. Obviously, if you ignore the gigantic howler, which is understandably, you know, it's kind of hard to do. However, I thought he had a decent game aside from that. He did do it though. Great goal from Bakramov and a great goal from Hernandez. Probably one of the best we've seen in the tournament so far. When the first half ended, I thought it was pretty even. Nasaf plays some pretty great football, and you could definitely see it from Sidikov's goal. It's a really great assist and a pretty decent finish too. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Nasaf, they just don't have the quality to defend well enough, basically. Way too many attempts on goal. They allowed so many shots outside the box, allowed them to encroach inside the box so often. I think you get towards the last 30 minutes of this game, Al-Hilal overwhelmed them. Milinkovic-Savic, insane game. He might have been the best player this week, to be honest. If I had to pick a player of the week, it probably would be Milinkovic-Savic. And we go from one game that was really interesting to just a really strange game. I just thought it was kind of crap. Tractor 0, Al-Wahda 0. Al-Wahda, they're a pretty interesting team. They beat Al-Ittihad last week, but this game they were kind of terrible, I'll be honest. And they definitely should have done better, by the way, given the quality of the team. This isn't, oh, they played terribly because they're not a good team. No, they are a good team, and they should have played better. Tractor couldn't get more than one shot on target. They had 69% of the possession. 69% of the possession. And they got one shot on target. The closest we got to a goal was an own goal, by the way, and a sitter that hit the bar. I think that was Tadic. I've got nothing else to say about that game. Next, Al-Gharafa 2, Al-Shorta 0. I don't have much to say about Al-Shorta. I've got plenty to say about Al-Gharafa, though. They should have been a lot better. And I think if you're going to struggle against a team like Al-Shorta, how far are you really going to make it in this tournament? But they had less of the possession and less shots than Al-Shorta at home against Al-Shorta. You've got a better keeper. You've got a better centre-back pairing with Sano and Zhang. You've got better fullbacks. You've got better wingers. You've got Hosselu playing as your striker. And you just really couldn't put it to bed. Al-Shorta, I think they played well for what they are. My personal man of the match, it's actually Al-Mawas. I think he's quality. I think he's severely underrated and is probably the best player in both lineups. If Al-Gharafa want to have a chance at making it anywhere in this competition, they have got to be packing away teams like Al-Shorta. When you play against better teams, you're going to get punished, especially when you get to the knockout phases. Al-Duhail 2, Al-Ahli 2. Got two teams playing against each other who are not having the best start to the season, respectively. But what Al-Ahli is struggling with is basically getting the strikers to score. The game against Al-Hilal, for example, just sort of showed what will happen if you just can't score properly, pretty much. Ivan Toney had a pretty poor game. It's kind of interesting though, because Al-Duhail, they play one way in the domestic league, but then they play totally different in the Champions League. Have they got the setup to make it far in this team? Yeah, they've got some really good wingers. They've got some pretty decent fullbacks. It's all about wing play this year, from what I can tell. A lot of the football is definitely centred not around the strikers necessarily, but the wingers getting all the way down to the byline and then crossing it in late. Problem with this system, though, is that you need the fullbacks to be top quality to make this work, because they will often overlap, or they've got to cover all the space that the wingers left behind. I thought Al-Ahli, they definitely got the tools to do that. Should they have won? Possibly. I think the strikers were definitely harming them, but 2-2, I think both teams will be happy to take that. All right, next game. Sanfrecce 1, Shanghai Port 1. I don't really know what to say about this. Sanfrecce, they've been in a pretty bad patch of form, to be honest. I think their draw with Kyoto Sanga definitely confirms, at least to me, that they're fully out of contention for the league title, unless there's some sort of miracle. But actually, it can be good for them, because it means they can put more attention on the Champions League. But from this performance, I'm not too convinced that we'll say anything too good. I can give Shanghai Port a lot of credit. They are a very good team. Obviously, they're in the run for the title, for the Chinese Super League as well. They're a team that never gives up. They play right to the end. Real grit, real determination, proper winners mentality. And they showed that this game with a late equaliser. Probably could have done better, but I reckon they'll be happy to have a point, see how terrible they are against Japanese teams. I think they can make up for the points that they didn't pick up here. Next, Seoul 3, Buriram 0. Seoul are just such a temperamental team. I do like Buriram. I've got a soft spot for them, but I think 3-0, I think it's not anything too surprising. A lot of these Korean teams have to take advantage of playing against teams like Buriram, who play a lot slower brand of football. When you play against slower opposition like this, you can just really focus on letting your creative players shine. And I think Seoul did that with Lingard. It really showed what he could do in terms of like his playmaking and just causing havoc for Buriram's midfield, which is a lot slower. Like Kosic and Zolj, like they're just not going to catch up with him. Chengdu Rongcheng 1, Gangwon 0. Finally, a good game. I mean, the Al-Hilal game was pretty good, but this, a big fan of. I think everyone's got a massive soft spot for Chengdu Rongcheng, so we're actually happy to see them win for the first time. I think going into this, you could argue that both teams had sort of 50-50 chance to win. Gangwon, they don't have a lot of their best players that actually helped them qualify for this in this first place. I mean, the best example is probably Yang Min-yok. Players of that quality are really hard to find in Asia, especially in the K-League where there isn't a ton of money around. Directors are really reluctant to spend big. I think Gangwon have been saving a lot of money and using it on free transfers. For example, I think Hongchul was a pretty smart signing, and I thought he had an alright game. But then a lot of the other major signings are basically left over, someone like Bolde and like Hadzic. So against Chengdu, Gangwon, they had a pretty big challenge. Their form has been pretty good going into the game. 3-2 against Seoul, 2-1 against Shanghai Shenhua. Massive result, by the way. Like in the league, yeah, lost against Suwon. And they drew against Daejeon. But, you know, you would have think they could have put up a better performance against Chengdu. But overall, I'm pretty happy for Chengdu to finally get a win. Their collapse last week was a little bit depressing to watch, I'm not going to lie. It kind of shows that they're a little bit naive. I feel the subs weren't particularly great, but this game they sort of regrouped and got their stuff together. Tim Chow, again, showing why he's one of the most underappreciated and underrated players in Asian football right now. He's so good. A lot of Chengdu's success is fully dependent on what Chow can do. And I think Gangwon really struggled to fully contain him. Chengdu play with 5 at the back. They've got really good fullbacks. They've got a solid centre-back in Yang and a pretty decent keeper in Jian. Gangwon, they don't have the experience really going forwards to make a difference. Like I said before, wing play is really important here. That's why both these teams played with 5 at the back, because they want the wing backs to support the wingers. And those battles are won and lost in those spaces. And Chengdu, they just have better players who can dominate those spaces, to be honest. Gerfinkel, for example, for Chengdu, is a lot better than like Yun, just like leaps and bounds better. I think So Jung-won showed once again why he's one of the best managers in Asia. Really good game management to see this game out. They tightened up when they needed to. He made substitutions at the right time. He definitely learned from last week. You can't try see out a game in like the 60th minute. So well-deserved win for Chengdu. Johor, Darul, Ta-zim 0, Machida, Zelvia 0. Machida, whatever I said about Sanfrecce basically applies here as well. Johor, well done not for losing, basically. Moving on. Vissel Kobe 1, Melbourne City 0. Melbourne City's game management was really poor. I think Vidmar did... I'm not sure what he was trying to do with the substitutions. He came in way too late. Some of the wrong players. I also think he's setting up the team pretty poorly. He must have heard what I was saying about wing play being important and then try to set up his team with that. But he's gone for, I think, the wrong formation. I just don't think he's got the players for it. He's set up with a 5 at the back. He's gone for 5-3-2. There's no wingers in there. And I think Vissel Kobe showed why you need those wingers, because Yuruki had a really good game and the fullbacks were there to support him. I thought Keitano had a good game. I thought Eno had a good game. And, you know, just because it's focused on wing play doesn't mean the strikers aren't a part of the equation too. Komatsu had a good game. His pressing was really good. His positioning was really good. And Melbourne City just could not keep up. I don't know what he was really thinking playing 2 strikers. I understand maybe that could work in the Australian League, but in the Champions League, where basically every single team is playing with really aggressive wing backs and really aggressive wingers, I think if you're not setting up to counter against that, you're sort of setting yourself up for like football suicide. Al-Ittihad 0, Shabab Al-Ahli 1. Now this was a stinker. Al-Ittihad, oh my goodness, I'm ready to break this down completely. Look, they had 67% of the possession and they had 2 shots on target. Their team is mental, by the way. Everyone knows Al-Ittihad's got one of the best squads in Asia, but that game, they were absolutely terrible. And they've got 2 of the best wingers in the entirety of Asia. They've got Bergwijn and Diaby, and they were just absolutely terrible. Diaby especially was so poor. And Shabab Al-Ahli, they came away with a 1-0 victory. Fully deserved. They were playing away against a team that on paper is way better than theirs in pretty much nearly every single position. Solid defending, and whenever they had possession, they did a really good job with it. Diaby was just so bad. Like, on paper, yeah, Benzema's a good player, but he had no impact this game. No contribution whatsoever. I thought every player was pretty poor, you know, with the exception of probably like Kante, Fabinho, Doumbia. Yeah, they're retaining the ball, moving it forwards. But again, if the wingers, they can't do anything with that, it doesn't matter. No, Mitai for Al-Ittihad, he's fairly aggressive, but he didn't really do much in the sense of supporting Bergwijn. I think Diaby and Bergwijn, they were often inverting into the midfield and supporting Benzema like that. Benzema was trying to bring them into the box, but Diaby was just terrible. If he can't score, it doesn't make a difference how you bring him into the game. He's just got to score. Next, Al Sadd 1, Sharjah Cultural Club 1. Really good goal from Akram Afif, but same as usual. Obviously one of the best attackers in Asia at the moment, if not the best. Terrible penalty from Lucas. Like, actually, I mean, anyone could have saved that. I could have saved that. Sharjah, in general, they looked pretty good though. Apart from the performance in the first half, they looked pretty good offensively. They're relying a lot on Turat, and I think it paid off. Obviously it paid off. He assisted the goal. Obviously it paid off. Al Sadd, sort of gets the second half, last 20 minutes, they seem to just completely fall apart. Sharjah, they were just all over them. The mistake was bringing off some of these players a little bit too early. Soria probably should have played a bit longer. He got subbed off really early. I think either way, Al Sadd, they were going to be disappointed with this. If it wasn't for Barsham in net, Al Sadd would have been pumped. It would have been like 3-1. They would have been absolutely hammered. Barsham saved them so many times. Shanghai Shenhua 1, Ulsan HD 1. Leonid Slutsky is a great name. He's also a quality manager, by the way. I really rate him, but I don't think his game management was particularly good. I think his substitutions were a little bit weird. I think taking off Gao for Haiyou Yang, I'm not too sure what he's aiming for that. Yang is literally 19, and I don't think he's experienced enough to play against Ulsan. I know Ulsan are terrible, but at the same time, they're pretty experienced, and they will put pressure on a player like Yang and really squeeze him out of the game, which I think they did. Especially when Tianyi Gao, who got taken off, is one of your more important players this season. So they're probably resting him for domestic league, but still, it's always hard to predict Ulsan. They might finally bounce back. Sometimes you think they're going to keep falling apart. This time they fell apart. They're absolutely terrible. They're in relegation form. Shanghai Shenhua, they're in title winning form. You couldn't have got a bigger contrast. Their defence was absolutely shocking. None of the Ulsan centre-backs looked like they cared. Kim Yong-won, how he's still playing, I have no clue. Actual terrorism football. So that was the Champions League roundup for this week. Tell me what you think down in the comments below. Did I get my evaluations right? Did I get my recaps right? Which teams surprised you? Which teams were disappointing? I know which teams are disappointing to me. Al-Ittihad and Ulsan, although Ulsan's going to keep disappointing everyone. If you want to stay in touch with Asian football, you want to keep updated at all times, make sure you follow the Asian Athletics Instagram. The link is in the description. It's the best way to keep a track of what is happening in Asia, whether it's the Champions League, the Chinese Super League, or Saudi football. Following on Instagram is the best way to keep getting updates on the beautiful game in Asia. Make sure you tune in next week for another recap of this amazing competition. My name is Charles Kim. I'll see you